Hello everyone, what's up? Jubitaz back with a new video, and today I got a pretty special one. As you can tell from the title, I'm going to be taking a deep dive into the off-screen Naruto lore, or the events that canonically did happen but just took place off-screen. At first, I was just gonna limit the video to just the fights, but I've decided to take it a step further and tackle the lore in a broader sense. The Narutoverse has a rich history and spans a decently sized timeline, all with different eras and generations of shinobi, some of which gets covered in the filler and the rest of which is left for the audience's imagination. The problem is that most of these stories, which Naruto fans are very interested in seeing, have been all but abandoned since the manga ended and we got the Boruto sequel. A sequel that split the fanbase in half, and most of the fans that didn't like it would call it a stain on Naruto's legacy. The thing is, a lot of fans, myself included, wanted an anthology series that explored the history and lore of the Narutoverse. Something that I imagine even the Boruto fans won't mind, but due to Kishimoto getting burnt out, and Viz and Studio Pierrot completely abandoning the Naruto fans, this is something that we never got. The closest thing we ever had to that was the one-shot manga for the 4th Hokage, The World Within the Spiral, and that was it really. Kishimoto did comment on the idea of making more one-shots in an interview he had in Paris in the summer of 2024, where he said, "Minato was the first, the second is Itachi. I say it half jokingly, but you never know," which sounds like not a lot of commitment to the idea. As for Viz, I mean, we can't even get a release date on those 4 anniversary special episodes, despite it being more than 2 years since the announcement. And I've even seen some fans say, "Let the franchise die, there isn't more to it." And that's what really grinds my gears. So today, I'll be going over all the Naruto lore and the off-screen battles to give an idea of what areas of Naruto could still be explored or expanded on for new content. Make sure you subscribe, and other than that, let's get to it. So let's start with the infamous encounter that we hear about when Kakuzu faced Kakashi and Team 7 and said that their headbands remind him of the time he faced the first Hokage. Kakuzu and Hashirama's battle is one that a lot of people talk about, but we've never seen the fight, not even in filler, which in my opinion is a missed opportunity. All we really get regarding the details of the encounter is a databook entry which describes how Kakuzu was assigned to a mission to assassinate the first Hokage. However, he suffers a loss in the face of a wood-style hidden jutsu and escapes. He barely makes it out alive, and when he returns, he is showered with dishonor and severe punishment. Bitterly angry over how he's been treated after having risked his life for his village, he breaks out of his cell and takes the village's prized forbidden jutsu alongside the hearts of the village elders. Now, the details of Kakuzu's mission remain a mystery. We have no idea why the waterfall sent him after Hashirama, who everyone knew as the ultimate shinobi. So it's either that they didn't really know who Hashirama was, or they sent Kakuzu out there to die on an impossible mission. I've always theorized that the hidden waterfall's possession of the 7 tails had something to do with it, since Hashirama had collected all the tailed beasts and was only giving them out to the great nations. So I've always assumed that that was the reason why the waterfall elders sent Kakuzu to assassinate the Hokage. Kakuzu was essentially just a political pawn to be disposed of, and that's why he abandoned any loyalty he had for his village and started to seek out only materialistic needs. In the filler, the village leader of the waterfall, Chibuki, says that the village possessed the 7 tails for their reputation of producing skilled jonin. So that could be attributed to Kakuzu, the skilled jonin that was able to go up against the first Hokage. Of course, Hashirama's in a completely different league, and once he gets serious, then it's over. Kakuzu never stood a chance. Still, we could have been able to scale him better if we actually got to see that fight. It's a waste that it was relegated to a databook entry. Though as you can see, some fans took matters into their own hands. This animation is by a YouTuber named Hajime. Bro, if you're listening, c'est incroyable. bravo. Sometimes I feel like the Naruto fans build up the show. As for the next off-screen fight, or fights, or confrontations, we got the second Hokage and the second Raikage versus Ginkaku and Kinkaku, and Tobirama versus the Kinkaku unit. The first encounter is brought up by the Raikage when he hears that Ginkaku and Kinkaku had been reanimated. He talks about the time that the second Raikage attempted to meet with the second Hokage for a peace summit between the Cloud and the Leaf, until they were ambushed by the Gold and Silver brothers. It seems like Tsunade was aware of that encounter, and she says that the second Hokage was left on the brink of death. The fate of A the second remains unknown. A lot of people assume that he was killed, but it's not confirmed anywhere. All we can do is speculate, really. I've always theorized that Ginkaku and Kinkaku's attack was politically motivated and that they had backing from a rebel faction in the Cloud, since they were able to stay there long enough to see the reign of the third Raikage and weren't banished for killing the second Raikage, meaning that they had domestic support and immunity for their actions. It's possible that a lot of the Cloud's residents did not want the peace treaty with the Leaf. If we assume the second Raikage was killed and the Hokage barely made it out with his life, then we know that the group known as the Kinkaku Force finished the job when Tobirama and his escort unit were on their way back from a mission. We did get to see the first part of that. It's when the Hokage decided to become the decoy so that his team could escape, which means that Tobirama believed that even if all 7 of them worked together, they'd get massacred. So it gives you an idea that the Kinkaku force was strong or highly skilled as they described, but it's pretty vague and open to interpretation. I mean, we don't even know for sure if Kinkaku was a part of that squad or not. A recent posting in the Naruto website said that the group was affiliated with the Cloud, but if my earlier theory checks out, that the brothers received some sort of domestic support, then that could explain everything. Also, the second Hokage has always been very difficult to scale because of the sketchy and obscure nature of both of these encounters. That's why there's so much disagreement when it comes to discussing his strength. I think that if we got to see one of these encounters, then we can see how rightfully powerful Tobirama Senju is. And also, apparently, Kakuzu also knew of the brothers, and he'd even seen Kinkaku steal beast powers in action before. That's also something that's never expanded on. Did he fight alongside them, or did he try to capitalize off of a bounty on their head? You see, this is what I'm talking about when I say unexplored lore. Now we're gonna move a bit into the more recent eras for these 2 off-screen fights or scenarios, both of which will have to do with the White Fang, Kakashi's father. We know that the Sand Village's elder, Lady Chiyo, held a grudge against Konoha's White Fang because he fought and killed her son and her daughter-in-law, Sasori's parents. One day, they were sent out of the sand during the Second Great Ninja War, and they never returned home. Now, we know next to nothing about Sasori's parents, not their status, nor their jutsu. We can assume that they were puppeteering Shinobi based on their remaining family. We didn't get any details about the fight, but I believe that it was a given win for Sakumo. The White Fang was a name feared across the lands, and even the Sannin paled in comparison to him, and Kakashi looked down at subpar Shinobi like Obito because he was raised by the genius known as the White Fang, so his standards were pretty high. We know that his weakness lied in his compassion and the failed mission that made everyone turn against him. The whole ordeal took a toll on him and he ended up committing suicide. We only get a few surface level details about his assignment. His team was within enemy territory and some of his teammates started falling behind, but Sakumo's teamwork and his ethics made him put the mission's objective on hold in order to save his comrades. One of the few things we know about it is that the fallback from the mission, or the consequences of Sakumo abandoning its objectives, was so catastrophic that even the teammates he prioritized over the mission blamed him for the failure of the mission. This has caused a lot of people to theorize that maybe Sakumo's failed mission somehow triggered the Third Great Ninja War, because how else could you explain the extreme antagonism that the White Fang faced at the hand of the villagers? I think Sakumo in particular is a character fans wanted to see more of, and it's most probably just to figure out what was the mission that caused him all that trouble. That's why Sakumo ranked as high as number 7 in the popularity poll, despite him being so obscure that we never even see him fight. And while we'd love to see him in action, I'm sure more people are interested in finding out what was the mission that caused the White Fang to take his own life. Circling back to the Hidden Sand Village and Sasori's descent into darkness, which led to another off-screen fight that we hear about, Sasori versus the third Kazekage. Sasori told Sakura and Chiyo that the third was his favorite puppet because of all the effort it took to add the third to his collection. We know that Sasori liked to add noteworthy specimens to his arsenal, and he was particularly impressed by the third Kazekage's Iron Sand, a technique that earned him the title of the strongest Kazekage ever. Considering that Sasori was a genius renowned through the sand, it's likely that he personally knew the Kazekage, and he may have even been directly under him, so I'd imagine that once Sasori decided to desert his village, he plotted a plan so he could ambush the Kazekage. He probably knew the third's schedule and whereabouts, as well as his personal guards, so he planned accordingly and took precautions. His comments to Sakura and Chiyo indicate that the third gave him quite the battle, but I'd imagine that Sasori eventually managed to get the third with his poison. That was Sasori's strategy, to face his opponent until he could poison them. The third could only evade the poison for so long and wouldn't be able to create an antidote like Sakura. Of course, I don't know for sure how Sasori dealt with the third Kazekage, but we know that the Sand Village initially searched tirelessly for their missing leader, and due to the ongoing war, they eventually had to give it a rest and select the fourth Kazekage. There's a lot of speculation because this is another fight that we never got to see, not even in filler, which is a shame because I feel like it would have been epic. You see what I mean? There's so much lore to unpack. And that's not it for the off-screen battles of Naruto. Another one is the death match between the second Tsuchikage and the second Mizukage, which resulted in both of their deaths. The two of them were rivals, and it seems like they eventually had an all-out battle where each of them used all that was in their arsenal, and the result was a mutual kill. It's hard to make up the details of this fight since we don't get much from it when they talk about it as eros. They just acknowledge that they killed each other. And then there's also the third Raikage's deathmatch against 10,000 shinobi from all of the other great nations to buy time for his comrades to escape. He fought for 3 days and 3 nights until he was taken down. We only saw a panel for that, but I guess this wasn't as important of a fight since he doesn't face any noteworthy shinobi. Still, it sounds kinda cool. And then we get to the fights that we see flashes or brief moments of, like Guy's father might die opening the 8th gate against the 7th Swordsman of the Mist. It was stated by Juzo that he managed to kill 4 of the swordsmen. We got to see him tell Guy and his team to escape, but we didn't get to see the fight itself. And another fight that we only see a small portion of is Orochimaru versus the 4th Kazekage. Like, we see Orochimaru stabbing the 4th in the anime, but it would have been nice to expand on it a bit. And the same could be said about the battles between the Akatsuki and Hanzo's forces. Like, we do get to see the final confrontation between Pain and Hanzo, but the conflict was a civil war that was raging in the Rain Village for ages. So there definitely was more to it than we saw in canon, which was basically just the final altercation between the two parties. And speaking of, Hanzo versus the Sannin is another fight we only see snippets of. I mean, the battle started off as a platoon of Leaf Ninja and Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru, and Hanzo managed to trickle them down to just the Sannin. And that's how they got the name the Sannin in the first place. Jiraiya versus Orochimaru is another one. I mean, we did get to see a bit of it in the anime, but it was like a Final Valley style battle where the idealist is trying to prevent his old friend from going down the path of darkness. And then of course there's also the off-screen battles that the Akatsuki had against their Jinchuriki targets, like Yugito the Two Tails versus Hidan and Kakuzu. We didn't get to see much of the actual fight itself, and that was because Kishimoto wanted to keep Hidan's abilities a mystery. The same thing happened with the capture of the Three Tails, and then in the anime the capture of the Seven Tails was also off screen. And it's not just the fights. There's plenty of off-screen lore in the Narutoverse that could get expanded on, but unfortunately never does. The truth is that I'm just scratching the surface when it comes to the history and the content that we can still get out of Naruto. One period that a lot of fans are interested in seeing more of is the Warring States era, getting to see the rise of the Uchiha clan and Madara and Izuna from a first-person narrative instead of the third-person narratives we got. I mean, that way we'd even get to see Madara's relationship with the other Uchiha clansmen, and that would make their betrayal of him a lot more emotionally significant. We could also see more of legendary historical figures of that era, like Ashina Uzumaki and Sasuke Sarutobi. Another period of time that could have been expanded on more is the early eras of the Leaf Village. We could see the first Hokage's health declining and get an actual cause of death, maybe even see a bit of the ruling days of the second Hokage, and also learn a bit more about his students, the future oligarchs, and see why it is that they held on to power for as long as they did. Also, watching the third Hokage Hiruzen fight in his prime to get a better understanding of why he was so wanked and considered the strongest Hokage in part 1. And another thing that could be interesting is Danzo and how he was able to create the foundation in the first place. Also, getting some additional adventures of the Sannin during the Second Great Ninja War, or additional fights that the Yellow Flash of the Leaf participated in for the Third Great Ninja War, or how Fugaku Uchiha gained the moniker of Wicked-Eyed Fugaku, or maybe how Shisui Uchiha awakened his Mangekyo Sharingan. More fleshed out backstories for the Akatsuki, like how Deidara became a rogue ninja, and how Hidan came across and became integrated into the cult known as the Way of Jashin. Though what would have been really cool was to see Obito's behind the scenes role in the earlier days of the Akatsuki. Maybe we could even see how he took control of the mist, or honestly, the history of the Blood Mist on its own would be very interesting to see, or even the stone, and finding out what assignment in particular did the third Tsuchikage hire the Akatsuki for, or even the early life of the Jinchuriki like Han, Roshi, or Yugito. And that's only the potential stories of the preceding era. There were over 15 years between the end of the Fourth War and the Boruto era, and while we got a few novels for this blank period, it would have been better to get some one-shot mangas instead, be that Sasuke's redemption, or Kakashi's mental journey to become the 6th Hokage, or Sakura's rise to the top medic in Konoha. I don't know about you guys, but I would have been a lot more interested in seeing some of these stories than that of the Boruto era. Once again, this isn't a stab at Boruto, but the truth is that me and a lot of Naruto fans are a lot more invested in the current era than we ever could be in the new generation. It was a very bold decision to toss aside all the characters that we cared about in order to introduce a new generation that the OG fans would not be as interested in. If you're one of the people that are satisfied with Boruto as a follow-up, then I'm happy for you. And Boruto's fine and all, but it doesn't really do it like Naruto, can't replace it. You see, what I would want ideally is Boruto could continue, but we need that anthology series, and creating one-shot mangas in a chronological order for the Naruto popularity poll results is the best way to go about that in my opinion. Though like I said, Kishimoto only seems to be mildly interested in such an idea. I know the future looks bleak for Naruto fans, but I'm actually not worried. I mean, despite the fact that the anime ended essentially 8 years ago, the Naruto fanbase has actually been growing steadily ever since. And it's this dedicated fanbase that won't allow the show to die, who may have been abandoned by Viz, by Studio Pierrot, and even by the author himself. But as long as we, the Naruto fans, stand together, then the show's not going anywhere. That's the beauty of it really, how the Naruto fans have been keeping the show alive on their own. I mentioned the YouTuber that made Hashirama vs Kakuzu earlier, and then there's even another fan animation project for The World Within the Spiral, which actually looks pretty good. Masashi Kishimoto himself was so inspired when he saw how devoted the Naruto fan still was that he made the Minato manga. So I believe that we can reignite his passion to continue with the one-shots. And honestly, with all the extreme events going on around the world right now, the rise of fascism and whatnot, a series that emphasizes compassion and mutual understanding is more needed now than it's ever been. But anyways, I think I've rambled on for long enough. This has been my deep dive into the unexplored Naruto lore. Please do me a favor and share this video with every single Naruto fan out there, as united we stand and divided we fall, and I believe that we can revive the series. But yeah, that's it for today. Peace out.